Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another cool review for you from a brand new brand, at least new to the channel, Reiser, out of Germany. They were established back in 2019. The watches are made in Germany, they are designed in the Netherlands, and they're basically another affordable new microbrand with a pretty cool, unique design aesthetic. This particular type of watch, if I was to classify it, would be an everyday watch. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for something that can be worn every day. Of course, you're going to want something that's really just a versatile blend of sporty and dressy attributes, which I think this particular model does a great job of. This is their Alpen Date. And the color scheme here is known as the Black Star, and it's really its intent is to be a sophisticated yet straightforward three-hand dial setup. These go for $590 on leather or $625 on bracelet, and that's direct. The brand was nice enough to send this over. I did not necessarily have my pick of the litter. They do have some pretty cool variants. I wish I could have seen the model with the bracelet, because you guys know I'm a big bracelet fan, and theirs looked pretty immaculate. So if any of you are ordering one of these, definitely let me know in the comments how you felt about the bracelets. These are basically on pre-order for a June release. I'm recording this here in kind of mid-May time frame. And yeah, it's a pretty cool piece. So let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, so as you can see, good looking watch. Am I right? That dial and the detail on there, I'm really digging that kind of guilloche wave texturing on there, as well as really the kind of jewel-like multi-facets all across the case. I think that looks really good, and the fact that it's a made in Germany watch is also quite impressive. Although I will say, of course, the standards for something being made in Germany, not necessarily the same standard as things being Swiss made or American made. That's all, you know, they're regulated differently, so you can't necessarily say one is the same as the other from that standpoint. This has a 41 millimeter diameter case. It's only 11.45 millimeters thick. It does have a 49 millimeter lug to lug. It has a flat sapphire crystal with AR coating. The crown is non-screw down, but it is signed nicely. It's a little bit on the smaller side, but I get for the aesthetic why it's a little bit smaller, but something that I did notice kind of within use. The movement inside, believe it or not, is an automatic Seiko Instruments NH35 with a custom rotor, and that custom rotor is actually pretty nice looking. Check it out. Makes you wonder why more brands don't add a custom rotor to this workhorse of a movement. And in terms of pricing, yeah, this is a little bit more on the expensive side for a watch with an NH35, but it's by no means outlandish. I think considering the build quality and the fit and finish just on the watch case alone, I'm sure if it had the bracelet, there would be more to impress me. But I gotta say, this feels like a really nice watch. And I mean, if it had, let's say, a Miyota movement in there, or maybe even just instead of an NH35, let's say it had an NE15, I think the price would be a little bit easier to swallow, but I think as is, it's still, you know, quite nice. As you can see, it does have a nice display back there with some etching, with a couple more details around there, made in Germany, etc. Very nice. And again, the custom rotor does look quite good. And in terms of the other side here, of course, we're going to get some nicely applied indices. That black guilloche pattern dial is great. Date at 3 o'clock. It does have black font over a white disc, which is quite classic. Some prefer kind of the other way. I think it kind of depends on the dial layout and whatnot and the indices. In this case, I think it's still pretty well balanced. Probably would have looked good the other way around as well if it had black disc with white font. polished and lume hands, Swiss Superluminova BGW9, and then it has water resistance up to 50 meters, which is great. Nothing crazy, but it's at least something where it's decently water sealed. So if it rains or something like that, or you're washing your hands, you don't necessarily have to worry about any water damaging the watch. Now, in terms of this bracelet style, it's integrated lugs. It has a leather strap with a signed deployment clasp. Very basic from that standpoint, but it absolutely does the job. And it tapers down from 25 millimeters to 18. So let's go ahead and actually, normally I kind of jump and kind of put this stuff off so you can't see it. But for those of you that have never really worked a deployment clasp, let me show you how it works real quick. So this is pretty standard. So you pop this down, you're gonna go ahead and push this in, and I believe I'm at about 4 holes is what fit me best. So I'll take that, pinch it closed. First you close there, then you close here, and boom. Now you have something where as you're putting it on and off, you don't have to fold or crinkle this, so it's going to actually help this leather strap last longer. The strap itself is quite supple. It's not bad at all. I mean, it doesn't shout out at me like luxury quality or anything like that, but it is really nicely done, well integrated. The lines flow really well. Let me actually give it a quick wipe from a couple of my fingerprints that are on there. And you can see this case is really nicely finished. It's a very interesting proposition that you're getting here, of course, with the fact that it's rounded and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's quite handsome. So let's actually go ahead and get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, as you can see on my 7 1/4 inch wrist, this is a pretty bold wearing watch. It reminds me of a big G-Shock, to tell you the truth, like the big steel ones. Am I right? Like, it just has a little bit of that, but it's nice because it's analog and it has a bit of a story. It's a Microbrand out of Germany. I think, the font and whatnot on the dial could probably be a little bit more unique, but it does the job, right? Up close, of course, it's going to feel relatively oversized because of the distortion from the lens. But you get down here, you get a little bit more arm in the picture, and this is absolutely a wearable and really attractive piece. I'll give them that. This is quite handsome. I like that they have kind of a Genta-esque aesthetic in terms of the case, and from the pictures I've seen of the bracelet, it's very nice, but it's not necessarily like a Gerald Genta homage in any means. It actually has a lot of its own character, and again, I kind of liken it to a bit of an analog mechanical G-Shock from that standpoint. And considering the fact that people are buying G-Shocks and then like putting them in these crazy Royal Oak style metal cases and bracelets and whatnot and attaching them, shows that there's a market for something like this, slightly kind of larger, more sporty, very angular and just masculine type of watch. Lays on the wrist very flat, as you can see, and it wears well. It's something that definitely is more on the sporty side, but because of the integrated leather there, it does do a nice job of dressing it up, as well as, there's that cool dial effect there with the texture, which also helps with, giving you some visual interest there, and also adding a bit of kind of that classic touch there. So with all that, let's actually go ahead, get this off the wrist, and check it out for some low light transition, lume shots, and closing thoughts. All right, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. Okay, BGW9, pumping, guys. So very pleasant surprise for the Lume. And I mean, it does give me confidence within that branding and saying it's made in Germany. And, you imagine something that's made in Germany is executed to a very high level. And in this case, with something just as small as having a really beautifully applied lume, it does give you that little reassurance. So yes, the choice of an NH35 does add just a hair of doubt in terms of kind of quality and execution. I have to say, in the metal, this thing does not disappoint. Now, one thing I do like to do, of course, is get some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to be coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath, overhangs, maybe underneath the shade of a tree, or just spending time in your favorite automobile. So it's nice to kind of get those less than optimal mixed lighting conditions, just to see, one, how the finishing renders, as well as two, the colors will render in various lighting. And you can see that dial just has so much play and livelihood to it as light comes across it. And even in some very harsh lighting conditions, high contrast, where you're going to be able to expose any defects, you can see that, yeah, there are some scratches and nicks. That is, I'm sure, because this is a review model. It might have already done the rounds and whatnot. But in terms of the brushing itself, it looks quite solid. So I'm not mad at that at all. Look at the lighting on here. It's almost like a little windmill action as light just dances across that textured dial. So very nice from that aspect. And you can see even in that kind of really washed out type of low contrast lighting there, it's still quite legible in so many ways. Now, all right, let's get into some closing thoughts on this piece, guys. On the wrist, very sporty, with a splash of class, which I dig. I think that's a popular space right now. I could see why a lot of people might like this. I could see why non-watch people would see this and think this is a really cool looking watch, which is always kind of a fun concept, that this is not necessarily made for every high-level connoisseur. This is something that just the everyman might see and be like, that is a great looking watch. And I think they do a good job of kind of capturing that within the design. In terms of model variants, of course, there's a green dial, as well as blue dials available. They're on bracelet or leather. And then there's also a rose gold coated case and bracelet option, I believe, for the black dial. Comparable models, it's tough. There are a lot of micro brands that are keying into kind of that steel sports watch, Gerald Genta, and then throwing in things like special and cool dials. Yeah, there's a space for that. And are there tons of micro brands out there using this movement? Absolutely. Are there tons that are a little bit cheaper? Yeah, but there's also some that are selling watches with these movements a little bit more expensive. So I think it's a bit of a wash from that standpoint. But there's honestly not too much that I would directly compare this to. There are some cool options out there, and they fall within kind of the same camp, but none of them that I can think of are in that kind of made in Germany camp, which I think is something that's different and cool. And if you're really into German watches, I have quite a few, but I have kind of a gambit of watches from different places: Japan, Switzerland, some stuff assembled in the U.S., some stuff partially manufactured in the U.S. So there's a wide array of what we got going on here. I can't say how much of what is made where, but I think it's cool that the execution on here is surprisingly good. I think the font doesn't do the design aesthetic any favors. And I think if it had, a better branding, not necessarily a better brand or a brand name, but just the execution of the branding on the dial, it would really kind of pump this up. So hopefully they're listening. Guys at Reiser, very, very cool watch, very well executed. I think the branding, if it was just punched up a little bit to match the high level case finish and the angular aesthetic and just the fact that there's a lot there, I think this watch would really sing. So it's not too far off as stands, and I could easily see a lot of people enjoying this one as it is exactly right now. But I do look forward to seeing kind of what they do in the future, what upcoming model variations that they have, you know, that come our way. I'm always a fan of new emerging brands, and I'm happy to share them with you guys. Bottom line, guys, I think this is a really cool new German option that doesn't rely on the Flieger or Bauhaus aesthetic, which many German brands do. It's just like, oh, it's a German watch. Oh, okay, well, it has this cool minimalist Bauhaus aesthetic, or it's a Flieger. There's just that seems to be the thing. So I think it's nice to see something different, you know, from a new German brand. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do it like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.